never let you go.
The alarm screamed at the same time the lights went out. Inside America's most secure prison, steel doors slammed shut one after another, echoing down the concrete halls like gunshots. Guards froze in place. Red emergency lights flickered on, painting the walls in blood color. A voice burst through the radio. It was broken, panicked, hard to understand. Control was lost. In one of the deepest cell blocks, a monitor flashed a warning no one had ever seen before. A locked cell showed as open. Another showed no camera feed at all. Then a third screen went black. This was not a drill. This was not a test. This was lockdown night. A guard named Daniel Price stared at the screen. His mouth went dry. He had worked here for 8 years. He had seen riots, suicide attempts, and violent men who never slept. But he had never seen this. One inmate was moving where no inmate should ever be. And then the radio crackled again with 4 words that changed everything. He's not in his cell. The screen went dark. No one knew yet how bad it would get. Minutes earlier, the prison had been silent. The place was called ADX Florence. Most people just called it the Supermax. It sat alone in the Colorado desert, surrounded by fences, cameras, and armed towers. Inside were men considered too dangerous for any other prison in the United States. Every move was watched. Every sound was tracked. Every door was controlled from a single command center. At least, that was how it was supposed to work. On lockdown night, the prison followed a strict routine. Inmates were locked in their cells for 23 hours a day. Guards moved in pairs. Doors opened and closed by computer. No one spoke unless needed. That night started like every other. At 8 p.m., the last meal trays were collected. At 8:30, lights dimmed. At 9 o'clock, final checks began. Daniel walked the corridor of cell block D. The air smelled like metal and disinfectant. Inmates lay on their bunks or stood still, knowing better than to cause trouble. One cell stood out. Cell D17. The man inside was named Marcus Reed. Reed was not loud. He was not violent. That was what scared people. He was quiet. He watched. He remembered everything. He had been moved to ADX 2 years earlier after a federal case that made headlines for weeks. The file on him was thick. Too thick. Daniel stopped in front of the cell and looked through the small window. Reed stood with his back to the door. That was strange. Inmates were trained to face the door during checks. Reed knew the rules. Daniel tapped the glass lightly. Reed did not turn. D17, face the door, Daniel said. No movement. Daniel leaned closer. Reed's hands were at his sides. His shoulders were tense. Reed. Still nothing. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his neck. He reached for his radio. Before he could speak, the lights went out. The alarms started seconds later. Back in the command center, officers scrambled. Screens blinked red. Doors showed errors. Camera feeds dropped one by one. This prison was built to stop escapes, riots, and attacks. It was built so that no single mistake could cause chaos. But something had gone very wrong. Captain Laura Mitchell rushed into the room. She had been off duty but was called in the moment the alarms triggered. What happened? She demanded. A technician pointed at the screen. System error during lockdown sequence. Multiple failures. That doesn't just happen, Mitchell said. Another officer spoke. Cell D17 shows open. But no door command was sent. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. Zoom in. The camera feed for D17 flickered, then froze. Where's the inmate? Mitchell asked. No one answered. In cell block D, Daniel stepped back as emergency lights flashed on. The door to D17 stood slightly open. That should have been impossible. The locks were steel, controlled remotely. No inmate could open them. Not even close. Daniel raised his baton and radioed in. Control, this is Price. D17 door is open. Static. Control, respond. Nothing. He took a slow breath. Training said never enter a cell alone during an alarm. Training said wait for backup. But the door was open, and the inmate was gone. Daniel pushed the door open just enough to see inside. The cell was empty. The bed was neat. Too neat. The toilet was clean. The floor was spotless. Then Daniel saw it. A small black dot above the light fixture. He stepped closer. It was a camera. Not a prison camera. A hidden one. Daniel felt his heart pound. Inmates were searched daily. Cells were inspected weekly. How had this gotten here? Behind him, footsteps echoed. Daniel spun around. The hallway was empty. Then a door slammed somewhere far away. The sound carried through the concrete like thunder. In the command center, alarms continued to scream. One officer shouted that a maintenance tunnel sensor had tripped. Mitchell turned sharply. Which tunnel? North Service Line. Not used in years. Mitchell clenched her jaw. Lock it down. We can't, the officer said. Controls aren't responding. Mitchell realized something in that moment. This was not a system failure. This was planned. Hours earlier, far from the alarms and chaos, the prison day had moved slowly. Marcus Reed sat on his bunk, reading a worn paperback book. To anyone watching, he looked calm. Bored, even. But inside his head, every second was counted. Reed had been watching the guards for months. Learning patterns. Timing steps. Listening to sounds. He had learned something important. Lockdown night was the only time when multiple systems updated at once. Doors. Cameras. Sensors. For 30 seconds, everything reset. That was all he needed. When the lights went out, Reed was already moving. He had spent weeks loosening a vent cover, working only when the noise of other cells masked the sound. He had used a piece of metal stolen from a food tray and sharpened on concrete. The camera had been the hardest part. He had taken it from a broken unit during a cleaning shift months earlier and hidden it piece by piece. He did not want to escape the prison. He wanted to prove something, that the system could be beaten. Back in the present, Daniel backed out of the cell and locked the door manually. His hands shook. He finally got through on the radio. Control, Reed is missing. His cell was breached. The reply came fast. All units, initiate full lockdown. Inmate unaccounted for. Sirens wailed louder. Guards poured into the corridors, weapons ready. Doors slammed shut automatically where they still worked. But some did not close. In one section, a gate stayed open. In another, a camera looped old footage. Mitchell watched the screens with growing fear. He's inside the walls, she said. He hasn't escaped. Then what does he want? An officer asked. Before Mitchell could answer, a new alert appeared. Unauthorized access. Control room door. Someone was trying to get in. The room went silent. Mitchell slowly turned toward the steel door behind them. A soft beep echoed. Then another. The lock light changed color. Red. To green. The handle began to turn. And that was when everyone understood. The case police thought was simple was never simple at all. And whatever was about to happen next inside America's most secure prison would change everything. The door started to open. The control room door opened only a few inches. That was enough. Every guard inside froze. No one spoke. No one moved. Guns were raised, hands shaking, all pointed at the thin dark line growing between the door and the wall. Then the door stopped. An alarm cut out suddenly. The screaming sound died. The silence that followed felt worse. Captain Laura Mitchell stepped forward slowly. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. Who's there? No answer. The door stayed still. Then, slowly, it began to close on its own. When it sealed shut, the lock light flashed back to red. The room let out a breath it did not know it was holding. Mitchell turned to the officers. He can access our systems, she said. That means he knows this building better than we do. A technician spoke, his voice tight. He rerouted control access through a backup line. Old wiring. We didn't even know it was still active. Mitchell nodded once. Then he's been planning this for a long time. Inside the prison walls, Marcus Reed moved through a narrow maintenance tunnel. The space was dark and tight. Dust filled the air. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping water that echoed with each drop. Reed moved slowly, calmly. He knew exactly where he was. Years ago, before ADX became what it was, the tunnels were used often. Old maps still existed. Reed had memorized them. He stopped at a junction and listened. Boots pounded somewhere above him. Guards were running. Searching. Reed smiled slightly. They were already behind. He reached into his jumpsuit and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button. Above him, a camera feed looped again. In the control room, an officer cursed. Camera 12 is frozen. It's replaying old footage. Mitchell slammed her hand on the desk. Find him. Now. Search teams split up. Each team had orders. Seal sections. Clear tunnels. Check vents. Daniel Price moved with his unit through cell block D. His chest felt tight. He kept seeing the hidden camera in Reed's cell. Reed had been watching them. All of them. Daniel reached a corner and stopped. Something felt wrong. Too quiet. He raised his hand. The team halted. A soft sound came from above. Metal scraping metal. Daniel looked up. A vent cover shifted. Before anyone could react, smoke poured out. Thick, white, burning their eyes. The team stumbled back, coughing. Alarms flared again. By the time the smoke cleared, the vent was empty. Reed was gone. Minutes later, another alert hit the control room. Power fluctuation. Mitchell felt her stomach drop. Way. East Wing. Inmate medical area. Mitchell's eyes widened. That's impossible. He'd have to cross 3 secured zones. But Reed had. He moved silently through a service corridor, his shoes wrapped in cloth to soften his steps. He stopped near a locked door marked medical storage. He pressed his ear to the metal. Voices. 2 guards. He waited. Patience was his greatest weapon. When the voices moved away, Reed pulled a thin strip of metal from his sleeve and slid it into the lock. The door clicked open. Inside, shelves held supplies. Gloves. Masks. Tools. Reed grabbed what he needed and slipped out. He was not running. He was guiding them. Back in the control room, Mitchell finally regained partial control of the system. Some doors responded again. Some cameras came back online. But not all. A new message appeared on the main screen. Text input active. Letters began to appear, typed slowly. You built a perfect cage. You forgot to watch the keeper. The room went silent. Mitchell stared at the words. His communicating. Another line appeared. This is what really happens during lockdown. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest when the message spread through the radios. This was no escape. This was a message. Then another alert sounded. Inmate down. Location, cell block F. Medical emergency. Mitchell turned sharply. That's on the other side of the prison. Reed stood in the shadows near cell block F, watching guards rush past him toward the emergency. Inside the cell, an inmate lay on the floor, unconscious but alive. Reed had set it up carefully. No permanent harm. Just enough panic. As the guards focused on the cell, Reed slipped past them into a restricted corridor. Ahead of him was a door few inmates ever saw. Data archive. Inside were records. Logs. Footage. Proof. Reed placed his hand on the scanner. The light blinked. Accepted. The door opened. Back in the control room, Mitchell saw the alert and felt real fear for the first time. He's in the archive, she said quietly. That's not possible, an officer replied. Mitchell didn't answer. She already knew the truth. The case police thought was simple was now out of control, and Reed was about to show them something they were never meant to see. Inside the archive room, Reed stood before rows of servers humming softly. Screens lit his face in pale blue light. He inserted the device he carried. Files began to transfer. Video, audio, logs, evidence. Behind him, a door slammed open. Freeze. Reed turned slowly. 3 guards stood with weapons raised. Reed lifted his hands calmly. The transfer bar on the screen hit 90%. And then the power cut out again. The room went dark. The hum of the servers stopped all at once. The blue light vanished. The only sound left was breathing. Fast. Heavy. Afraid. Emergency lights flickered on a second later, glowing red. The 3 guards stood frozen, weapons raised, unsure what to do next. Marcus Reed did not move. He stood with his hands still raised, calm, like he had expected this moment. One guard shouted his name. Reed slowly turned his head toward the nearest camera on the ceiling. Even with the power cut, he knew it was there. Then he spoke softly. This was always the plan. Before anyone could react, a loud bang echoed through the archive room. Not a gunshot. A door. Somewhere nearby, a heavy steel door had slammed shut. The guards looked at each other in confusion. Then another alarm started. Different from the others. Lower. Slower. Automated containment active. Captain Laura Mitchell watched the alert appear on the main screen in the control room. Her blood ran cold. That protocol was disabled years ago, she said. It seals entire zones. An officer looked up. Zone F and G are closing off. No manual override. Mitchell realized what Reed had done. He had trapped them. Not the guards chasing him. The prison itself. In the archive room, thick metal shutters began sliding down over the doors. The guards backed away as the exits sealed shut. One guard yelled into his radio, but only static replied. Reed lowered his hands slowly. You should sit, he said calmly. This part takes time. One guard stepped forward. You don't control anything now. Reed looked at him. Check your radio. The guard did. His face changed. The channel was dead. Elsewhere in the prison, confusion spread fast. Teams lost contact with command. Doors refused to open. Lights flickered on and off. In cell block C, inmates banged on doors, shouting. In block A, everything went silent. Daniel Price was with a response unit near the medical wing when his radio went dead. He tapped it. Nothing. He looked at the others. We're cut off. A guard beside him whispered, "This isn't a prison anymore." They moved carefully down the corridor. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow felt closer. Daniel noticed something on the wall ahead. Fresh marks. Scratches. Someone had moved through here recently. They followed the marks to a service door. It stood open just a crack. Daniel pushed it wider. Inside was a stairwell going down. Too far down. "This leads to the old lower levels," another guard said. "They sealed these years ago." Daniel swallowed. "Then why is it open?" They started down the stairs. Back in the archive room, the guards watched Reed carefully as the red lights blinked. "What did you take?" one guard demanded. Reed smiled faintly. "What you never wanted found." He nodded toward the dark screens. "Footage. Logs. Edits." "What edits?" another guard asked. Reed leaned back against a server rack. "The ones that made certain incidents disappear." The guards exchanged uneasy looks. Reed continued. "Inmates who died. Cameras that went dark. Reports rewritten." "You're lying," the first guard said. Reed shook his head. "That's why this prison exists." Silence. In the control room, Mitchell fought to regain access. Backup systems failed one after another. Then a screen came back online. A live feed. It showed the archive room. Mitchell leaned forward. She saw Reed, and the guards trapped with him. Then Reed looked directly into the camera, as if he could see her. Another message appeared on the main screen. "The evidence is real. You just never looked." Mitchell's hands trembled. "Where is the data?" she whispered. In the archive room, Reed reached into his jumpsuit and pulled out a second device. Smaller. No lights. The guards moved forward, weapons tightening. Reed held it up. "This is already gone." "What do you mean?" a guard asked. Reed smiled wider now. "Transferred before the lights went out." Back in the stairwell, Daniel and his team reached the bottom. The air was colder here. Older. A long tunnel stretched ahead. Lights flickered on one by one as they stepped forward. Daniel felt his chest tighten. On the wall ahead, someone had written a message in black marker. "You are late." Then the tunnel lights shut off. At the same time, the feed in the control room switched again. Now it showed a different camera. A wide shot of the lower levels. Daniel and his team stood frozen on screen. Mitchell realized something terrible. Reed was not trapped. He was watching. And whatever he had planned next was already in motion. Then the camera feed zoomed in. On Daniel's face. And cut to black. The screen stayed black for 2 long seconds. Then the feed came back. Daniel Price stood in the tunnel, his face pale under the weak emergency lights. Dust floated in the air like smoke. The walls around him looked older than the rest of the prison. Cracked concrete. Rusted pipes. Warning signs faded by time. The control room watched in silence. Captain Laura Mitchell leaned closer to the screen. "Daniel," she said into the radio, even though she knew it would not work. "Daniel, respond." No answer. In the tunnel, Daniel raised his hand slowly, signaling his team to stay still. His heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. Someone was watching them. He felt it. A low sound rolled through the tunnel. Not loud. More like a deep breath coming from the walls. Then the lights above them flickered. One went out. Then another. The tunnel grew darker with each step forward. Daniel whispered for the team to stay close. They moved slowly, boots scraping softly on the floor. Ahead, the tunnel split into 2 paths. That should not have been there. According to the maps, this was a dead end. Daniel realized the truth too late. These tunnels were never fully sealed. They were hidden. Back in the archive room, Marcus Reed stood calmly as the guards argued in low voices. The metal shutters around them were fully closed now. No way out. One guard tried the door again. Nothing. Reed watched them without fear. "This prison was built to forget," he said. "I just remembered." One guard stepped closer. "You won't leave here." Reed nodded. "I don't need to." He looked up as a small green light blinked back on above the server rack. The guards turned. The screen came alive. Live video. Not of the archive room. Of the tunnel. Daniel and his team. In the control room, Mitchell gasped. "He's routing the feed through the archive," a technician said. "He's using our own system." Reed spoke again, his voice steady. You watch inmates every day. Tonight, you watch yourselves. In the tunnel, Daniel felt the floor vibrate. A loud metal clang echoed behind them. He spun around. The way they came in was gone. A heavy door had dropped from the ceiling, sealing the tunnel shut. One of the guards cursed under his breath. Daniel's radio crackled for half a second. Then a voice came through. Clear. Calm. Daniel Price, the voice said. You always followed the rules. Daniel's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. Reed. How do you know my name? Daniel demanded. A soft sound came from the tunnel walls. Speakers. I know all your names, Reed replied. You wore them every day. The tunnel lights flared suddenly, blinding them. When the light settled, something new was visible ahead. A door. Black. Heavy. Not marked on any map. Daniel took a step back. That door was sealed before this prison opened, Reed said. No one was meant to go past it. Why are we here? Daniel shouted. Reed's voice lowered. Because this is where the silence starts. In the control room, Mitchell slammed her fist on the desk. Shut it down. Cut his access. We can't, an officer replied. He's locked us out again. Reed watched the tunnel feed closely. Inside that door, he said, are records no one wanted kept. Cameras that never turned off. Rooms no one admitted existed. Daniel felt his stomach drop. You're lying, he said. Reed paused. Then the door ahead of Daniel slowly unlocked. The sound echoed through the tunnel. Click, click, click. The door began to open. Cold air rushed out. Daniel raised his weapon, hands shaking. Behind him, one of the guards whispered, We shouldn't go in. Reed's voice returned, softer now. You already did. The tunnel lights went out completely. In the control room, every screen went black at once. Then one screen flickered back on. It showed the inside of the hidden room, and Daniel stepping forward into it. The camera zoomed in on what was waiting inside. Mitchell covered her mouth. The feed cut out, and the prison fell completely silent. The silence did not last long. A low hum crept through the prison, like a machine waking from sleep. Emergency power kicked in, one system at a time. In the control room, screens blinked back on, but most showed nothing but gray static. Captain Laura Mitchell stood frozen, staring at the one screen that worked. It showed the hidden room. The camera angle was wide now. Too wide. The room was larger than expected. Concrete walls. Thick cables running along the ceiling. Old cameras mounted in the corners, some broken, some still glowing faintly. In the center of the room stood Daniel Price. He did not move. Behind him, the door slammed shut. Daniel spun around and rushed toward it. He pulled. Pounded. The door did not budge. His team was gone. The tunnel behind him was empty. He was alone. Daniel, Mitchell said softly, though she knew he could not hear her. Stay calm. In the room, a light flickered on above Daniel's head. Then another. Then many more. The walls were covered with screens. Hundreds of them. Each screen showed a different part of the prison. Cells. Corridors. Medical rooms. Interrogation rooms. Places that were never listed on any map. Some feeds were old. Grainy. Dated years back. Others were live. Daniel turned slowly, trying to understand what he was seeing. Then he noticed something worse. Some screens showed moments that were never reported. An inmate being dragged down a hallway. A camera suddenly turning away. A report being edited on a terminal. Daniel felt sick. You see it now. Marcus Reed's voice echoed through the room. Daniel clenched his fists. What is this place? The truth, Reed replied. This is where mistakes were buried. In the control room, Mitchell listened as Reed's voice came through the speakers. He had routed audio back in. This prison is perfect, Reed continued. Perfect on paper. Perfect in court. But not perfect in the dark. An officer whispered, My God. Reed went on. Every time something went wrong, it was recorded here. Every time someone crossed a line, the footage stayed. Mitchell swallowed hard. She recognized some of the dates on the screen. She had signed reports for them. Daniel stepped closer to one screen. It showed a man in restraints, struggling. Then the feed cut. Daniel turned away, shaking. Why show me this? He shouted. Because you were never part of it, Reed said. You followed the rules. You believed the system. Daniel looked up. Then why trap me? Reed paused. Because someone has to witness it. In the control room, alarms suddenly flared again. A new alert appeared. External connection detected. Mitchell's eyes widened. He's sending it out. An officer shouted, "Data transfer in progress. Multiple destinations." "Stop it," Mitchell ordered. "We can't," the technician replied. "He's already done most of it." Inside the hidden room, Daniel felt the floor vibrate. Screens began to shut off one by one. The evidence was leaving. Reed's voice softened. "By morning, this will not belong to the prison anymore." Daniel stepped back. "You'll destroy everything." "No," Reed said. "I'll expose it." In the control room, Mitchell realized what would happen next. Investigations, hearings, trials. The prison would never be the same. But something still felt wrong. "Where is Reed?" she asked quietly. No one answered. Then a final alert appeared. "Life signs lost, archive room." Mitchell's heart dropped. She switched feeds. The archive room camera flickered back on. The 3 guards lay on the floor. Alive, but unconscious. The shutters were open. Reed was gone. Mitchell whispered, "He let them live." In the hidden room, Daniel heard a new sound. Footsteps. Slow. Calm. Coming closer. He turned toward the door as it unlocked again. Light spilled in. A figure stood in the doorway. Not Reed. Another guard. Eyes wide with fear. "Daniel," the guard said. "You need to come now." Daniel hesitated. "Where's Reed?" The guard swallowed. He turned himself in. Daniel stared. "What?" In the control room, Mitchell heard the same report. "Inmate Reed located," an officer said. "He's standing in the central corridor. Hands raised. No resistance." Mitchell closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them. She knew this was not over. Because Reed had never wanted to escape. He had wanted control. And now, as guards moved to take him away, a final message appeared on the main screen. This was only lockdown night. The message stayed on the screen. This was only lockdown night. No one in the control room spoke. Captain Laura Mitchell felt a cold pressure in her chest. She understood something now that she had missed before. Lockdown night was not the end. It was the beginning. In the central corridor, Marcus Reed stood perfectly still. His hands were raised. His face showed no fear. Guards surrounded him with weapons drawn, shouting orders he did not react to. Reed slowly went to his knees. He did everything right. Too right. As cuffs clicked around his wrists, one guard leaned in and whispered, "It's over." Reed looked up calmly. "No," he said. "It's recorded." The guard stepped back, confused. Reed was escorted down the hallway, cameras following every step. For the first time all night, the prison seemed to be back under control. But the damage was already done. In the hidden room, Daniel Price followed the other guard out. The door sealed behind them again, as if it had never opened. Daniel's hands were shaking. "What happens now?" he asked. The guard avoided his eyes. "Internal investigation. Federal review. Media." Daniel nodded slowly. He knew what that meant. Careers would end. Lives would change. Some truths would never stay buried again. Back in the control room, Mitchell watched Reed being led toward temporary holding. She noticed something odd. He was smiling. Not wide. Not proud. Satisfied. "Put him in isolation," she ordered. "No access to anything." "Yes, Reed was placed into a reinforced cell near the command wing. Cameras worked. Locks responded. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. An hour passed. Then another. Outside, the desert sky began to lighten. Dawn crept in slowly. Mitchell stayed at her post. She had not slept. She did not blink much. Then a technician spoke quietly. "You should see this." Mitchell turned. One screen showed a news feed. Breaking news. Leaked footage from a federal prison was spreading online. Videos. Documents. Dates. Faces blurred, but locations clear. ADX Florence. America's most secure prison. Mitchell felt her breath leave her body. "It's everywhere," the technician said. "Media. Government channels. Foreign servers." Reed had not just sent the evidence. He had released it everywhere. Mitchell slammed her hand on the desk. "Bring him in. Now." 2 guards went to Reed's cell. The door opened. The cell was empty. The guards froze. "Control," one whispered. "He's gone." Mitchell stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Impossible. The cell never opened. A camera feed switched to Reed's cell. The footage rewound automatically. They watched in silence. Reed sat on his bunk. Then the camera blinked. Just for 1 second. When it came back, the cell was empty. No door opening. No alarms. Nothing. Mitchell felt true fear for the first time. "How?" she whispered. An officer checked system logs. His face went pale. He never left, he said. Mitchell turned slowly. What do you mean? He switched identities, the officer replied. During the chaos. A guard badge. A uniform. Logged as staff. The room went silent. Mitchell realized the truth. Reed did not escape the prison. He walked out of it. Then a final alert appeared on the screen. External perimeter, cleared. Reed was gone. And no one knew where he was headed next.